Hello, I'm William Gallagher and this is 58 Keys. First thing, thank you very much for all the really nice comments about the new second weekly 58 Keys video, the 58 Keys writing workshop videos that go out on Mondays. I have though been asked, how can people see just these workshops, because they're meant for any writers, but not also these 58 Keys Wednesday videos that are specifically for writers who use and who write on Macs, on iPhones and iPads. You don't want to watch me, but I thought that was a very good point. Actually, it hurt, but it was good. I made a 58 Keys writing workshop playlist. Okay, if you use the link in the description to this video, you will only get the workshop videos. I hope you'll enjoy some of the others, but you'll get those. Now, back to the OG 58 Keys. Previously, last week, Apple introduced the new iMac, which is excellent, the new Mac Mini, which is superb, and actually is also the one I'm strongly thinking of getting, plus the new M4 MacBook Pro, which by any measure has to be overkill for writers. I said that, actually, last week. I also suggested reasonably strongly that the MacBook Air might be better for you if you are a writer who needs a portable, a laptop Mac. But at the time, I did not know that Apple had done something else new. As of last week, that lower cost MacBook Air now comes as standard with double the amount of RAM, the kind of the working memory than it did before. It has 16 gigabytes instead of 8 gigabytes. 16 is twice 8. Look at the quality. What would you do without me? The price remains the same. That's the key thing. So it's like getting a $200 or a £200 saving off a Mac that, depending on your needs, might well be better for you than the old 8 gigabyte MacBook Air. It's still not a MacBook Pro, though. So, especially since I am a writer who writes on a MacBook Pro, let's you and I walk through the differences to see if you can make a wise buying decision and whether or not I made a foolish one. But actually, unless you're really on the fence about the two types of MacBook, or you're just curious about the two different types, you could actually just stop the video now with this. The MacBook Air is best for most people, certainly including writers. It's what else you do beside writing where the difference can become a thing. Here is the MacBook Pro. It's not the new M4 one, because as I write this, it's still quite a few days before those are in people's hands, but it is the M1 Max edition that I've been hammering at since 2021, so a few years now. And here is the MacBook Air. Again, not the newest one. But in this case, actually in both cases, these versions, these slightly older ones, will more than do for what we need to know, which starts like this. Either MacBook can, of course, run any Mac writing app, any of them. They're proper Macs, aren't they? The new MacBook Air, with its 16 gigabytes of RAM, will also comfortably run Apple Intelligence, the new writing tools in Apple Intelligence. And actually, that's really why Apple has done this, why it's doubled the RAM and kept the price. Apple Intelligence, it needs some room to work. And now you've got it. This particular MacBook Air has 8 gigabytes of RAM, and I don't know how well it's going to cope with Apple Intelligence. But as I say, if you buy the new one, well, you don't have to worry about that at all, because you're certainly fine. So, given that either of these MacBooks will run any Mac app, the difference between the MacBook Pro and the MacBook Air for writers looking only at writing comes down to, well, there'd be price, size and weight. There are other factors in buying one of these devices, such as battery life, for example, but writing does not take a lot out of the battery. It takes a lot out of you and me, but not out of the batteries, okay? Also speed. For you and me as writers, well, speed, the MacBook Air wins on everything, really. You still, though, have to make a couple of decisions, but the MacBook Air is a great machine for us. I don't think that has changed a great deal with the extra RAM, but even so, it has changed, and it's a change for the good. And I know that all of the more significant, dramatic even changes with the new M4 MacBook Pro don't matter for us as writers doing writing and for doing writing on the move. Look, no question, you want a MacBook. They are superb. But if you are not going to be traveling around all that much, you will get more value out of a Mac Mini like I have behind me, or an iMac, especially iMac with a screen. Nonetheless, if you are going to be moving around, then as important as the price is, there's also the size to consider, and I think to consider first. Well, for one thing, it affects the price. It also affects the weight a little, and because overall, I think it affects just how portable a portable Mac can be. Looking at the MacBook Air, your choice with the MacBook Air is currently a 13-inch model like this one, or a 15-inch one. I think the 15-inch one is too big. I mean, it's great to have a larger screen, but for being able to just slip into a bag, being able to carry around with you, 15 inches seems to me to be too big. Just to be awkward though, I do think there is an argument that the 13-inch version might be too small. Okay, I say this as someone who waited for there to be a 14-inch version of the MacBook Pro, so I might be a bit biased there, but still, between too small, too big and just right, since the Goldilocks 14 inches are only on the MacBook Pro, if I were buying a MacBook Air, I would buy the 13-inch one, especially actually since using this one. I'm changing my mind a bit. I'm coming to think 13 is fine. I haven't used it enough to be sure, but yeah. There is a hidden extra choice involved in this because, of course, there are two 13-inch MacBook Airs. There's the MacBook Air with an M2 processor, and there's the MacBook Air with an M3 processor. The 15-inch MacBook Air, it's only available with the M3. Buy the M3. M3, 13-inch MacBook Air, away off you go. M2 is more than fine. I'm using M1 very happily, but get the latest one available because it lasts longer. It's like years from now, right, the M2 will no longer be supported, so you won't be able to use the latest software, but the M3 will be for a while. But that's years away, okay? M2 is also older now than M3. Look at the quality of information, so it's cheaper. A 13-inch M2 MacBook Air starts at £1,000 or $1,000, while an M3 MacBook Air starts at $1,100. And you say that aloud, actually, and it seems both a lot of money and a huge bargain compared to the MacBook Pro, because that now starts at £1,600 or dollars, and it can go very far up. I spent over $3,000. I'm like, it's so hard to carry around a 3,000 device like that. So M2 or M3, MacBook Air, 13 inches or 15 inches, those are the broad choices with the MacBook Air. There is also how much RAM, working memory it has, but I think actually Apple's kind of removed that. With its new 16 gigabyte standard, the concern is kind of gone. More is always better, but the thing is, less is a problem. You can't add RAM later. You also can't add storage, that's another thing. You have to decide at the time of purchase, and unless you pay for extra, you now get 256 gigabytes of space on a MacBook Air. I think it is exceptionally hard to know what storage you're going to need, but I can also tell you this is about more than how many novels can you write and save on your Mac. Because when your Mac gets below a certain amount of space, the entire machine slows down. In fact, I can tell you, I once had a 128 gigabyte Mac Mini, and it became so frustrating that, well, not only could I have wept at times, but I had plenty of time to weep, because it got to a stage a year in or so, by a certain point in the afternoon, no matter how much I deleted off the Mac in the morning, that 128 gigabyte Mac Mini would be so full and would so slow down to the point. Clicking, you click the save button, the time between clicking and it actually saving became minutes. I mean, I'm not exaggerating, minutes, 4 to 6 minutes, and always while I was on a deadline. So 128 gigabytes is bad, but fortunately, you can't get that anymore. 256 gigabytes is obviously better. 12 gigabytes is better. Still think you're working that one out. But there is also, of course, a price to pay. You get 256 gigabytes as standard now, but choosing 512 for the MacBook Air adds £200 or dollars. Go to 1 terabyte and you're adding £400 or dollars. You start getting close to MacBook Pro pricing, but you don't quite hit it. And then actually, even if you bought a MacBook Pro, you'd be adding RAM and storage to it like I did, and you saw what happened with the price. Short version, actually for whichever Mac you choose, desktop or not, portable or not, choose as much space as you can. I know I over twitch about it because of that ferociously bad experience with the 128 gigabytes. And because of it, I now buy as much internal storage as I possibly can. There is a strong argument that I am wrong, that you can buy external storage drives that you plug in when you need them for much, much less than Apple charges for storage space. And that is definitely true. Absolutely. But I got burnt. And still, I will always go high on internal storage. And actually, I think that's especially important in a portable. I mean, you don't want to be carrying around external storage, although actually, as it happens, I do. I carry external drives for backups, and actually there's a particular type of work I do where it's handier to put it on one of these and do something, yeah. But that's nothing to do with writing. Whereas this next bit, right, this is definitely for writing, and I think it's yet another point where the MacBook Air wins. Weight. I don't especially think the MacBook Pro is heavy, but when I turn to pick up the MacBook Air, it's like, wow, actually. I mean, weight varies slightly between different models, yeah, and the different sizes, the 13 or the 15-inch MacBook Air, the 14 or the 16-inch MacBook Pro. But just for one example, the one I have, the base model of each one, well, the MacBook Air is the base here. It goes like this. The base 14-inch MacBook Pro weighs 1.55 kilograms or 3.4 pounds. The base 13-inch MacBook Air weighs 1.24 kilograms or 2.7 pounds. You know, again, you say it aloud and it feels different. It doesn't feel like, you know, that's a great differential. But pick up the two machines, and it is. Travel around with one or either of the two machines, and it really, really is. MacBook Air wins and wins easily on weight. The size is a bit more touch and go, but a 13-inch MacBook Air is also small enough to carry around pretty easily. MacBook Air also wins on price. Now I think it comes out equal on RAM since Apple has done this thing of doubling the standard amount, so that's pretty much MacBook Air. The M4, right, in the new MacBook Pro, no question, it is better and it is faster than the M3 or especially the M2 in the MacBook Air. But for writing, you won't see it. Not the way you really noticed moving from an Intel Mac to an M1 Mac. I am told that moving from M1 to M4 is just as dramatic as a move from Intel, but I don't know. M1 to M2 to M3, it didn't seem to me, that didn't appear to be very startling, but maybe. Anyway, the M3 MacBook Air is certainly powerful, and in fact, it's certainly more powerful, I think, than my M1 MacBook Pro. So now it sounds like I made a mistake buying the MacBook Pro. I think it's sounding like if I were buying today, you know, with the extra RAM and the M3 processor, that I would buy the MacBook Air. I don't know. I don't know what I would buy now. But I do know why I bought this MacBook Pro back in 2021. Well, actually, I had help for one thing. That was a big point. The Arts Council of England, thank you very much, Arts Council, gave me a grant for a certain project, as part of which I had proposed buying the then current 13-inch MacBook Pro. There was reason at the time to be pretty sure a 14-inch model was coming. And although I knew obviously it was going to cost more, I hung on, not buying anything for that project, not buying anything, until the 14-inch MacBook Pro model was announced. And it was announced just days before the end of that project, and when I was required to report back about all the final spending and all the last budget details to the Arts Council. It was tense. The Arts Council gave me about £1,500 for that part of the project, and in the end I paid out another £1,500. I went for more storage, I went for more RAM, and I also went for a faster version of the M processor. I realised actually I haven't talked much about processors other than saying, you know, terribly informatively that M4 is better than M3, is better than M2. Yeah. There are also, within each of these, most of these, there are versions of the M series. So I bought the M1 in what's called the M1 Max version. Really, what I was doing overall was I was buying the fastest machine that I could afford with as much storage as I could possibly manage, and also actually with as much RAM as I could squeeze out of my bank account. And while I am a writer who does not need any of this for writing, I still bought it because I also do this. Back in 2021, I used to make 50 to 60 videos a year. It's now about 120, 130, plus over 100 podcasts. You know, you work it out, it's a lot. Video is the thing. Video is really easy and a very convenient way to explain why you would ever want a more powerful Mac. Or it is if you happen to already edit video, because then you'll already know that the thing about video is that you're working with these gigantic files. I mean, so big. They're so big that they take time to even open, certainly time to work with, and then in the end, a lot of time to prepare for things like showing on YouTube or whatever. If you use video editing already, or audio editing, it's the same, you get that. But if you don't, well, photography can do the same thing. Science applications, maths applications, some video game things that I don't understand. There are lots of jobs where the speed of the Mac is really important. A lot of jobs where if you can get something done in 2 minutes instead of an hour, well, then you can do more of it. You can do more work. You can therefore earn more money to pay for these things. Yeah, writing is not one of them. But I write on this machine. I then edit that writing on it. I shoot video using my iPhone and I edit that video on here, or I record audio directly into this machine and then I edit in Logic Pro as it happens, and I produce podcasts from this machine wherever I am. And I do image work. I mean, it sounds like my CV now, but I illustrate articles a lot. I make posters for these YouTube videos. Yeah, but things I do it all in one machine, often at the same time, and it copes fine. It copes better than I do. All of that can be done on the cheaper MacBook Air, except some of this stuff, for me, the video editing really strains the Mac enough that it gets hot. I mean, it can be very hot. You don't leave it on your lap hot. And it's hot enough that it's a problem for the Mac. It can get hot enough that the Mac could even be damaged by that heat. So what happens on the MacBook Pro is it hits a certain point and cooling fans kick in. They keep the machine cool enough so that it can carry on working. There are no fans in the MacBook Air. So what happens when you do this type of work on the MacBook Air is that it too gets hot, but it can't cool itself down. So instead, the MacBook Air slows itself down, right down, so that it's no longer working so hard, it's no longer running so hot. The result of which for you and me is that I could edit video and audio on either the MacBook Air or the MacBook Pro, but I can do it for longer on the MacBook Pro, and it's also a faster machine in other ways. But the key thing is it doesn't have to slow down. The extra price I paid for the faster MacBook Pro does pay for itself, and I can get more of my type of work done, and I can get it done faster, which actually also leaves me enough time to write, which is a huge unexpected bonus. So in 2021, I bought the MacBook Pro in order to do the work that I knew I needed to do, and that work has grown. After about 3 years, is it now? I can say 2 years. I've hammered this machine, and it's still superb. I kind of need to clean it a bit more, but it's superb. The MacBook Air, though, over that time has improved, because actually it used to look like this. Excuse me. It used to be a very wedge shape, and that wedge shape thing, that was brilliant for typing on, but it meant even less space for cooling air to circulate by itself, without fans. When I bought my MacBook Pro, that wedge on the MacBook Air made this cooling difference so clearly acute that it was actually, financially painful, but otherwise an easy decision. Today's MacBook Pro, though, is much closer to today's MacBook Pro, much closer, the two models, than they've ever been before. I think for what I do, I would still go for the MacBook Pro, but I know the difference is a lot smaller. Except actually, I also plug a lot of things into my MacBook Pro. External storage, also wireless microphones and things. And actually, it's still the case that the MacBook Pro has more ports for that kind of thing. So, Last week on 58 Keys, I suggested the MacBook Air as being best for writers. This week, with Apple having relieved a concern, really, by doubling the RAM, I would double down on that. Actually, more than a suggestion and a recommendation, I think I would now definitely say, urge you even, MacBook Air is the one. But late at night, gone midnight, when I'm editing the video, doing the last touches to a podcast or something, I do remain glad that I bought the MacBook Pro, that I did. So there you go, a clear case of do as I say, not as I do. Glad I could help. There. That's it for this edition of 58 Keys. Thanks for watching. Remember the brand new video workshops on Mondays, also on this 58 Keys channel, also in that playlist. But take care of yourself. In the meantime, write more. And I'll see you soon.